I'm now joined with Maurice Sadlier, Programmes and Policy Director for World Vision Ireland, to discuss the need for more funding to help families suffering from the humanitarian crisis in Syria, still soaring after the earthquake and 12 years of war. Good morning, Maurice. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Johnny. Thanks very much for having me on this morning.
You're welcome. First of all, Maurice, tell us how bad the situation is in Syria for children in terms of lack of food, displacement, being out of school, health issues and so on.
Well, Johnny, we're seeing after 12 years of war in Syria, the situation just remains so dire for many children there. We're seeing humanitarian needs are at their highest ever, and even really more so since the recent earthquake that hit northwest Syria and Turkey has really made a dire situation even worse. We're seeing that about 6.4 children living in Syria today, there's 2 million of them out of school. And 40% of those are girls, and they're increasingly at risk of child marriage, of abuse and other forms of violence. And we're really seeing that. So we're seeing families in desperate situations are actually considering selling their children or their girls into child marriage as a coping mechanism. So people are really at their wits' end, and they really are forced into desperate situations that they wouldn't normally take or normally consider, because of the ongoing crisis. Imagine, my eldest child is 12, and I can't imagine if all she would ever have known is being displaced from her home and war. That's a whole childhood where children have known nothing but war and continuous fighting and bombing, and many of them living in tents and camps and sort of very temporary shelters. So it's a really desperate situation that many of these people find themselves in today.
Would there be many children who had lost their parents from the earthquake?
I don't know the figure offhand, but we are seeing quite a number of sort of what are called unaccompanied minors now because of that, and part of the work that international agencies are doing are trying to sort of find people's families and kind of retracing and re-putting people together with their families. So it is an issue, and it kind of that in itself brings a huge vulnerability issue and a child protection issue to the situation, and kind of making sure that those children aren't sort of trafficked or taken into abusive situations. So it's a very dangerous situation.
I suppose that's where the NGOs come in, the local aid workers.
Yeah, exactly. And World Vision has been active on the ground for the last 12 years in northwest Syria, responding to this crisis. And World Vision Ireland, with the support of the generous public here in Ireland and the Irish government, we've been implementing a number of programmes in northwest Syria, supporting sort of child protection programming and gender-based violence responses. So working with women and children to make sure they're protected from all forms of violence, that children get an opportunity to be children, I suppose, Johnny, is really what we're looking at. It is kind of the establishment of child-friendly spaces where children can come. They get some sort of psychosocial support, they get counselling, they get an opportunity to interact with other children through play and reading, and just learn some coping skills and mechanisms for these very desperate situations. And then we're also working with women to kind of see how we can support them in these very difficult situations, working in some sort of small livelihoods opportunities, again in sort of peer-to-peer counselling, in support through this difficult situation. And we've just started a new programme called Empower, enabling meaningful participation of women and girls for essential rights. And that programme, funded by the Irish government, will go for the next 5 years, working with women and girls, because it is women and girls who are the most vulnerable in these situations, to make sure that they're protected and that they get to participate and that their rights are upheld in this very difficult situation. But it is, there's a huge amount of need there. We've just got some support from UNICEF to help people with the crisis and the impacts of the earthquake, and kind of supporting people with startup kits again. So sort of what people need to rebuild their lives in a situation where they had very little as it was.
Okay, and for those who have been displaced following the earthquake, they must obviously be at a very high risk of developing PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. What's your view?
Exactly, yeah. These people are sort of, and that's where the importance of mental health and psychosocial support really comes into it. And it's something that our colleagues in northwest Syria and the Syria response have been really talking about, not just because of the recent earthquake, but over the last number of years. We're seeing a high level of PTSD among populations there because they are going through a very traumatic period. So it is something that we do focus on a lot, is how we support that psychosocial support within the communities there and help people continue to exist.
And over the years, there have been attacks on health infrastructures, schools, IDP camps. Then COVID came along, and recently a cholera outbreak. Would that be right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's a lot of it is caused by people being in these very temporary situations, and access to clean water is a real issue, and something that we have done from time to time. All water has to be trucked in to fill the tanks for the community. So it's a very difficult situation where you have attacks on sort of civilian infrastructure is very difficult. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was sitting in the office in Amman, so in Jordan, where our head office is for the Syria response, with a colleague who was actively watching an app on her phone to see if a health centre we support was bombed or not. Can you imagine that that's part of your day, was to sit there and see, is this health centre bombed or not? And taking the action in advance to try and evacuate everyone from the health centre because intelligence had told us that there was a bomb on the way. And how do you continue the maternity services? And it was all the maternity, the women in delivery were moved into the basement because that was the safest place. So it's a very intense sort of place to work and sort of anticipate all these challenges and work with all these communities. So yeah, there's the needs are massive, and there's continuing to be all these challenges, and that happens in a lot of situations, Johnny, where we would have people in temporary locations, and disease and issues spread much faster. So cholera, COVID spread quite fast, and so yeah, it's an ongoing situation. And of course now with the recent earthquake as well, cholera would be something we would be watching as well because of the need for clean water.
Okay. I believe that over 50,000 people who needed life-saving assistance in the first few weeks following the aftermath of the earthquake, they were able to get it, all because of the prompt response from World Vision. Would that be right?
That's exactly it, Johnny. And because World Vision has been active on the ground and we have a presence there and had established lots of partnerships with many local NGOs, we were immediately able to respond to the earthquake, and we were quick off the mark. And we were distributing, I remember talking to colleagues there in the first week, and the issue was heat. And it remains to be, we're coming into spring now, so things are starting to improve. But winters are very cold in the area, so the immediate issue was ensuring that people were heated, because people had lost their homes, they had lost everything, and sort of sleeping outside. And oftentimes people were afraid, even if they had a house, they were afraid to go back into their homes. So we were there and sort of really rapidly responded to the situation. And it continues to evolve. We just had an alert this week that now there has been floods in the area. So it's such an unfortunate series of events where you have a sort of a population who are already really sort of at their wits' end because of 12 years of war. Then there was an earthquake, and now we're seeing floods. So there's just a continuous need for support and for continued engagement with the communities there to help them to survive at the moment.
Okay. Has the Irish population been generous so far since the earthquake in terms of contributions? Sorry.
They have indeed, Johnny. They have been really generous with their time. So World Vision, along with 6 other agencies, launched the Irish Emergencies Alliance appeal to the earthquake there, and we raised significant funding from that, which has supported our work there, and also support from the Irish government has enabled us to respond. So on all fronts, the Irish public continues to be supportive, and we know that the times are difficult here, but people continue to be supportive.
Yes, but I'm sure
massive needs.
Sorry to cut across you there, but I'm sure a lot more funding is needed to assist families in the region.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So we continue to work with our team in northwest Syria and indeed Turkey to respond to people's ongoing needs, and even, as I said, the fact that there was a flood again this week. So if anyone wants to support the work of World Vision, they can just go to our website, worldvision.ie, and then it's very clear on our homepage how you can support our Syria and Turkey response there.
Thanks for that. Right, so we'll leave it there for today, unless, of course, anything else you'd like to mention.
Not at all, Johnny. Just to thank everyone again for their support and for all their interest in the work of World Vision. We greatly appreciate it. And thanks to yourself for having me on again. It's nice to reconnect after a while.
You're most welcome. Thanks again, Maurice, for joining us. It was great talking with you. Keep up the great work, by the way, and all the very best. Take care.
Thanks very much, Johnny. Mind yourself.
Now, that was Maurice Sadlier, Programmes and Policy Director for World Vision Ireland, talking about the need for more funding to help families suffering from the humanitarian crisis in Syria.